Disclaimer. Judge Ron Rangel is providing this podcast and website for educational purposes only, as well as to give the public general information regarding topics related to the criminal justice system. The views, thoughts, and opinions of his guest speakers are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Judge Rangel. All rise. You are now listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel, educating the public and expanding mindsets. Subscribe on our website, beyondthegavelpodcast.com, or your favorite podcast platform for more of the latest podcast episodes and updates.
Welcome to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. I am your host. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I am going to timestamp it. It's August the 19th, 2025. It's actually an important day for me and my family. It was 7 years ago that my wife passed, and my daughters and I are going to get together later. We're going to have something to eat. We're going to talk and hang out, and there's really nothing more special. You know, my dad passed a couple of years ago, and I was thinking about him quite a bit this morning as well. I get my mom every weekend. I really enjoy spending that time. I think when you lose somebody is when you really, really, really value and cherish the time that you have and the people around you. In a way, some could say that that's kind of sad, but in another way, it's kind of important because we should always be reminded of what matters. Today's topic, today's conversation is going to be something along those lines. Before I get there, some thoughts. I finished a jury trial, and in this jury trial, I went to the back and I spoke to the jury. Now, let me tell you how this works. Jury comes in, they give us a verdict, right? So we take the verdict. We thank them for their service because it clearly is a service. Jurors come in, they're tasked to listen to all the evidence. They're tasked to take the law that we give them, and they're generally unfamiliar with the law. They put the facts that they find to be true with that evidence. They render a verdict. They go home with those things, right? So at the end of every trial, I always tell them, I'm going to go back and I'm going to speak to you. And basically what I do is I thank them. And I ask them, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What did you learn? Is there anything that you could think of about the system that you have questions about? I'd love to answer those for you now. So I always take an opportunity to do that. And really all judges do that. At the end of every trial, judges enjoy going to the back and talking to the jurors. Now, some things that we do not talk about. We never, ever, ever tell them our opinions about the case. And it's invariably, I'll go to the back and a juror will always ask me, do you agree with our decision? And I always tell them, that's not for me to say. I have no opinion as to what it is that y'all did because y'all are the ones that were tasked to make these difficult decisions. Y'all are the ones that took time out of your day, took time out of your life, put everything aside for a certain period of time. It could be days, it could be weeks. You come in, you give us that attention, you take the role as a juror seriously, and then you render that verdict. Nobody has a right to tell you what they think about your verdict because they weren't there listening to every single thing. And it's not just about what's on that transcript, right? It's not just about what they hear and what they believe, but it's what they see. When you evaluate whether or not somebody's telling you the truth, you're not just listening to the words that come out of somebody's mouth, right? You're also paying attention to their affect. How are they speaking? Do they have some sort of dog in the fight? Do they have some sort of interest in the outcome of the case? What perspective do these people have when you listen to them? So you use all the skills that you use throughout the course of your life in figuring out what that truth is. Then you come back and you render a verdict. Nobody has a right to tell you their opinion as it relates to what you decided. What you say is justice, right? What the jury comes back with its verdict, that verdict in and of itself is the truth. And as long as it was a fair process, and generally they're always very satisfied with jury service. I've never really heard anybody complain about their jury service. They always tell me it was a great educational experience, and they walked out and they were feeling fantastic. So yesterday I went to the back. We had a jury trial. And again, I'm not going to tell you anything about what is not on the record. Judges can't give their opinion. And this trial just finished. We have 30 days from today for a motion for a new trial or a notice of appeal. That's generally how that works. But the jury told me something that I hear all the time, right? Why is it on this felony case that the police went out, They didn't get any sort of attempts of making fingerprints or obtaining fingerprints from a casing on a bullet. They didn't try to get other video. They didn't try to investigate and interview other folks in the area. The allegations in this trial were a man and a woman were having an argument. They're getting into a fight. The man leaves in a rush. The woman sort of kicks him out. It's caught on a Ring video across the hallway in this apartment complex. Then later, shots are fired. When I say later, I mean a few seconds later, shots were fired at the home. And generally what jurors do is they try to piece these circumstantial pieces of evidence together to try to figure out what happened. And they always wonder, why didn't we get more, right? Why didn't we get some sort of fingerprint analysis? Why didn't we get other Ring cameras? Why didn't other things happen? And that's a very common refrain that I hear from jurors. And one of the things that I tell them is you got to think about this situation. This is a situation where a man fired at an apartment complex, but nobody was injured. Nobody was killed. Thankfully, the man fled, so there was no on-the-scene emergency where the police had to come in and separate people and keep people safe. The gentleman had fled, and he wasn't going to go back. Police officers, like all other parts of the criminal justice system, are majorly unfunded, right? They do not have the resources that they need to do all the work that they have to do to investigate a case. And so think about a detective that goes out to a scene. While a detective is out at a scene, and this is a case involving a felony offense where somebody could go to prison for up to 10 years if he's found guilty of this. They go out to a scene, and while they're at that scene, they're getting other calls that are happening. So reporting officers are going to scene to scene to scene, running back and forth, trying to write reports. Detectives are using all the resources that they have. So if you have a situation where a woman says, this man fired at the apartment complex, nobody was hurt, nobody needs to be separated, there is no emergency for those police officers to spend all the resources that they have. By way of example, a couple of years back, when I say a couple of years back, for me, this is my 17th year, so a few years back could be longer than a couple of years, but it's as long as I've been a judge. When I first became a judge, DWI enforcement type officers for the San Antonio Police Department, folks that are out there looking for intoxicated drivers on the road, do not have cameras on their cars, right? So they're stopping people, they're giving them their field sobriety tests, and there's no capturing of that evidence on any sort of video. The reason for that is because the resources weren't there for the San Antonio Police Department to put cameras in those cars. They didn't have dash cams because they didn't have the resources. So imagine if we were to spend on every single felony case where somebody's arrested, we get on average 1,008. I ran those numbers about a month ago. We get 1,008 arrests per week in San Antonio. That's just Bexar County, San Antonio, Texas. If the police were to spend the resources on every single case trying to get a fingerprint, every single time trying to get DNA analysis, trying to get all of this forensic evidence, trying to spend all the resources on every case, it would bankrupt the system. And as a society, do we want that? Do we want all of our resources to go to these types of cases where you don't have necessarily an emergency pressing? The offense is over, nobody got injured, nobody needs to call the emergency, and there are other calls that are coming in. Generally, law enforcement and our society spends money on those types of cases where somebody got hurt, somebody was killed, there was an allegation of some sort of sexual assault, then they'll do the forensics. Beyond that, we just don't have that kind of money. And jurors are always surprised when they go through a trial that not enough resources were spent, and it makes them reevaluate things. So if you're ever paying attention to the news and you come across some sort of story where you think the plea bargain was a little weak, that the prosecution could have gotten more time out of an individual that entered into a plea, remember that a lot of this is based on what a jury will do at the end of the day. And sometimes cases that may seem to us to be very clear when we watch them on the media may not be so clear in the courtroom. Jurors definitely expect, based on TV shows where they have all these forensics and all these experts come in, jurors want to see a lot to find somebody guilty of a crime. And one of the thoughts that I had someday, if I were to ever have a different position, let's pretend let's pretend that someday maybe I was an elected DA. I would want the prosecutors to learn to have those types of conversations with jurors during jury selection. What type of evidence do you expect to see? And as a result of that, how much resources do you think should go into all these types of cases where maybe you don't have that major injury? Something to consider, something to think about. I started this conversation talking about the 7-year anniversary of my wife's passing, and so this is a fortuitous time to have our guest today. I'm very excited. I've known her for a very, very long time. Let me introduce to you Pamela Allen. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you.
I appreciate you sitting there listening to my diatribe. Tell us about yourself. Give us a little bit of your background. Tell us your resume in a sense. Let the listeners know who you are.
Absolutely. Of course, I'm Pamela Allen. I am the CEO of Eagles Flight Advocacy and Outreach. And it's a nonprofit that helps families in crisis, empowering them to a better future. We also do a lot in the special education field. I am the mother of a 29-year-old with autism. I do have 4 children, and all of them have a specific diagnosis, but the autism was very impactful for me and was one of those life events that changed your trajectory. Absolutely. And so I've been a special needs advocate. Special education law is very interesting to me, and I advocate for that in the public school system for our special needs students. We also advocate for those special needs adults who happen to get involved in the legal system. And it's a very big issue here in San Antonio. We have a lot of special needs adults that are in Bexar County Jail as we speak. As we've seen in the past months, as school was ending last semester, we saw a few special needs children, a 5-year-old get handcuffed, an 11-year-old spend 8 days in the Bexar County juvenile system. And so both of those, though, had a special needs diagnosis. And so we work very closely with families, helping them to understand what their rights are in the public school system. We help women who've been through domestic violence, who battle with that. You've known the statistics. It usually takes a woman 7 times to leave, and after that, that's when it becomes more dangerous. We've buried a couple of women who did not make it out, Andreen McDonald being one of the most familiar cases. And we got involved with that one specifically because her daughter, who witnessed the crime, also had autism. So it was a case that was very dear to me, and we still hold that family close. We have an outreach center on the south side. We assist over 150,000 a year with food, clothing, baby items. We have a baby pantry named Giovanni's Hugs, and that was named after Giovanni Ochoa. I sure didn't want anybody to forget that baby's name. And so we assist families who are struggling, and raising their children has become critical. And so we help them in that arena as well. We have a special needs adult day hab that we operate. And we also bury abandoned and abused infants. And that has been the cases that have just catapulted us into the national spotlight because of the number of cases that we've had. And we work with refugees as well. That's just something that has always been one of my favorite things to do. When I lived in Europe, I worked with the refugees in Bosnia and Sarajevo. That was just a passion for me. And so that translated as we came to back home to San Antonio because this is where I'm from. And so I am the spokesperson for the family of Lena Sadarkil, the little girl who's been missing for almost 4 years
She's
now.
still missing, huh?
She's still missing.
I
Yeah.
remember that one.
So yeah, we stay pretty busy.
Yeah, you have your arms in a lot of things.
Yes.
So let's sort of go over this a little bit. Okay, you mentioned you have some children, 4 children.
4 children.
You have a 29-year-old. Is that your oldest?
So actually, he's my baby. My oldest is 42.
All right.
And I raised my 2 grandsons. So that has been, just like, okay, here's another generation.
There you
But
go.
I'm very blessed to be able to raise them. It became a very critical situation for them. And as I buried babies, I remember explaining to my husband, I don't know that you're going to agree with this, but here's one thing I do know. I will never stand over the grave of one of my grandchildren. I'm going to promise myself that. And it was a very critical situation for them, and we needed to take them. And I did.
Well, I know your husband, Tim. He clearly, seeing everything that you're involved in, he clearly is very supportive
Yes.
of everything that you do.
Thank you,
right?
Lord.
Yes.
And, we got married in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been married for a long time and wasn't very supportive and was single for a while. And Tim had no idea what he was doing.
That's how it works. That's how it works. He got trapped.
We're doing what? I remember putting him with all the refugees as we're giving out clothing, and Burmese and Nepalis and Sudanese and the Iraqis and the Afghanis, everybody joining to get clothes. And I remember his first reaction was, what is this? And I said,
Yeah.
oh, my clients, welcome. So
Yes.
it's been a lifestyle change for him, but you're right about the support, because this cannot be done without support of someone next to you, cheering you on, and also guiding you through the disappointments, because there's been quite a few.
That's the secret, right? When I was a prosecutor and I left the DA's office, the boss that I had, when I told him, hey, I need to leave, student loans, I need to make some money, that's what he told me. He told me, you're always going to be successful in whatever you do because you have that support in the home, which is very rare. It's a very rare thing to have that kind of full support. So we've both been very, very blessed.
Yes.
All right. You talked about your 29-year-old son with autism. So just for the listeners to understand, what exactly is autism? How does that present itself in an adult, especially?
It presents itself very differently because it is a spectrum disorder. And now when a child gets diagnosed with autism, it's level 1, level 2. And I'm like, okay, I don't get that. But it is a spectrum disorder. And it is called what he has, the classic autism. So when he was diagnosed 27 years ago, the ratio was 1 in 1,000. I was always so cautious. Where am I ever going to find another mom to speak to? It was 1 in 1,000. All I knew about autism was Rain Man. And that was my first prayer after they said autism. I prayed, please God, don't let him be Rain Man. and I remember praying that. And all these years later, he does have some Rain Man characteristics, but it involves their social skills, their verbal, being able to have a conversation. It's a neurological disorder. He still perseverates on some things. He just focuses in on one thing, a hair being out of place, and he'll just okay, can you fix your hair? Because I can't talk to you until you do that. But I think we all have our quirks.
I was going to say, I think I got some of that myself. Yeah.
Don't let me have anything in my teeth, because he's going to point it out very quickly.
Are you a perfectionist, or are you all right? Kind of the same.
We all have our quirks.
Yeah.
But, since it is a spectrum disorder, we see young people that are nonverbal, hand flapping, self-injurious. And then we see those that are very highly intellectual, can talk to you about things, but are not very social, so cannot make that eye contact. And we've been very successful.
So that voice then that became the advocacy part that you fill, that then came from your experience 27 years ago.
Yes.
And then that at some point then led to you to come up with the concept of a nonprofit related to the types of advocacy that you do. What is a special needs advocate? You talked about doing that earlier. What does that kind of work look like for you?
It is sometimes controversial. You are oppositional because, but you're also there as the arbitrator. Because you have a school district who is not doing what they need to be doing in the best interest of a child, whether it be an assessment, whether it be a qualification for services, whether it be following through with those services. This is a living, breathing document. And this is a legal document that I love saturating myself in that. And so this advocacy means that the parents and special education law is very, very complicated. I speak to many lawyers and they said, listen, I'm going to need your help on this. I know criminal law. I don't know special education law or how it applies to my child. And so I've lived and breathed this stuff for so long that it's just part of who I am. And so it means getting the child not the best education, because we can't say we want the best, but getting them an education that they would have if they didn't have a diagnosis. And that makes a difference. And so we teach parents, or I teach parents, this is how you can ask for it. This is how you could work together with the school district, because typically it's an us versus them kind of theory that does not help the child. But if we work together, then we're going to be able to get the child exactly what they need to be able to move forward. And so I'm always training parents and helping them understand this is a part that you need to learn as well. Not being angry. Sometimes schools do some things that, and you know, we were talking about this earlier too. Now we're seeing school districts using handcuffs, using the police as a form of behavior modification, and that's not working either. So I work with parents on how do we step in effectively. That word's always going to be, how do we do this effectively?
Right.
And be able to actually advocate for your child.
So you're advocating for those that are less fortunate, that need a voice, right? And so in doing so, you're doing your part to make our community better. That's big. That's huge. I know that you're involved with something related to the Baby Moses Law.
Absolutely.
Right. You want to tell us what that is?
Yes, because this is just this has been such a big part of who we are too. Of course, in 1999, State Representative Jeannie Morrison, she wrote this amazing bill. And our governor back then was George Bush, and he signed it into law.
That was George W. Bush, for those not from Texas.
Yes.
I do remember him as governor here.
It basically this. A parent has up to 60 days. If they decide that they cannot keep their baby, they can safely surrender their baby to a fire station, a hospital, or any clinic that has a Safe Baby Site logo. It's a yellow logo with a mother holding a child. They will not be prosecuted, not be charged with abandonment, no questions asked. They safely surrender that baby. This has been a very effective law.
So was there some sort of high-profile case or something that brought attention to that issue? Maybe, you want to tell us about?
Yes, no, absolutely. By the way, Texas was the first state to do this. We call it the Baby Moses Law. All of the other states followed, but they call it the Safe Haven Law, just so you can have a little bit of that history, because that's important to know that Texas was the first one to step into that. And it was life-saving. It's been life-saving for hundreds and hundreds of babies. So let's come to 2013. That's when we got very active in that. And let me just give you a little history of why.
Oh, yeah.
In November of 2013, my niece was having her baby. So it was my grandniece. And, but she was told that this child had Potter syndrome and that her organs would be born outside of her body. She would not have a chance to live. It would be a miracle if she did. But we're a family of faith and we believe in those miracles. And so they suggested she terminate the pregnancy. And immediately she went to her mom and dad, my sister, and she said, this is what I've been told. And they didn't say, no. They just said, this is your choice.
Right.
You have to make this decision, honey, and we are with you no matter what. And so she had her baby. Her name was Danielle, and they told us she's only got a little bit of time. Y'all need to come in, and you need to come and say goodbye. And I remember we lined up both sides of the hallway, and they brought her from the nursery, and they brought her into the room, and we followed. And I kissed her, and I said, I'll see you soon. Amazing warrior, you did great. And we kissed her goodbye. It wasn't a dry eye in that room. Nurses and doctors were just very moved by our faith. So I got to witness the most perfect love, blanketed in love before you get to meet the greatest love of all, right? And so it was just amazing. It was so profound that I got to witness that. So 6 weeks later, San Antonio's waking up to the news that a newborn was found at the waste management facility. And I had just had a procedure. I was hospitalized, and I came out of the hospital, and I don't watch the news very often, so I'm on the couch, and Tim is sitting with me, and I see the news. And that was insane to me, because I thought, wait a minute, I just got to witness this most beautiful thing, and this baby's in the trash. And I got up and I started pacing and pacing, and Tim's like, hey, calm down. I'm like, no. And I'm pacing, and I looked at my Christmas tree, and there's Noelle. And I said, that baby's mine. That baby's mine. And Tim said, okay, you need to calm down. And I said, no. And of course, I called some lawyers and people, politicians, and I said, hey, listen, this baby's mine. And they're like, what are you talking about? This baby in the trash can is mine. And that's all I kept repeating. And I called the medical examiner. Understand, we had never, ever buried a baby before. I did not know what I was up against. I had no idea. All I knew that this little boy needed a mother to give him some dignity, and I was going to be that mother, and his name is Noelle. That's all I knew.
That was a high-profile case, right?
Very high profile.
I actually remember that.
Yes.
I just left the DA's office, and I remember reading that, and I was struck by that as well. It was a very powerful, impactful moment, I think, for a lot of people. So you basically thought to yourself, this baby's been abandoned.
Who's going to show it any kind of dignity or respect?
Right. And so in your mind, you were going to come in and provide some dignity to that child. I mean, right? That's what.
Pretty much that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I bothered everybody. Listen, I thought that the Bexar County medical examiner was going to file a restraining order against me. And I say that jokingly.
Maybe they did.
Jimmy Holging. No, they didn't. It was Chief Jimmy Holging.
Oh, yeah.
And they're good friends of ours now. I love that man. He had so much patience, because this was not anything that had been done. And what had to happen is I had to take legal custody of a child who's been deceased. And
You had to go to court?
yes, they had to go to court. And that was such, I guess it was a process that had to happen, and I had to witness, and I had to understand what had to happen. Little did I know, and you saw what happened, Judge. We did our 65th burial at the beginning of this year.
Yes.
So the process, I needed to go through that, as painful as that was, because it was extremely. I did meet with the mom, the mother who murdered her child, because I had to get her to sign a document that gave me permission to bury the child that she murdered. And this is our legal system.
Was she in custody at the time? So you had to go to the jail.
I went to the
You had
jail.
to explain, hey, these are the things that I want to do. So she gave you custody.
Yes, she did. I actually went to go meet her. And, I had in my mind everything that I was going to say to her. How could you? Why would you do this? But the moment I saw her, just compassion came over me. She turned the corner, and she had the skin coloring and the hair of my own daughter. And this was someone's daughter.
She was young?
Yes.
Yes.
And all I could think was that if I'm ever going to be a reflection of God's love, it can't be, okay, you're an idiot. I'm not going to do that. Right. And so I told her why I was there, and she actually signed the document for me, and she said, thank you. And I told her, I've named him Noelle. And she said, that's a good name.
That's a beautiful name.
And did you name him? And she said, no. No. something happened. And I felt that from her because she had two other children, never in CPS, nothing, but something unhinged to make her do that. And so I got her signature.
Noel was a newborn infant?
Newborn. He was 3 days old, and she strangled him with the cord from the duffel bag that was given to her by University Hospital. That's how they were able to track him down everything, because of the duffel bag that she put him in. And I remember leaving her and telling her that God loved her, and she was very struck by that. How could God love her when she murdered her baby? But I just know that there's not one person you're going to look into the eyes of that God doesn't love. So
You felt compassion for her.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was the first in 2013. What I did ask the hospital, because I did call the administrators and I started just, give me some information about what happened to her while she was in your care. And they just completely shut down. There was no way that I was going to be, okay, we're filing a suit. That's not what I was getting at. What I was getting at is I think it's important for you to explain to them the baby Moses law. She didn't have any family come and see her. She didn't name the baby. She was distraught. At least if you would have explained that to her, she could have left the baby there and walked out, and everybody would be living their life. And so that's just not what happened. And so I really trying to reach out to the hospitals, telling them that I think, especially university, where we have a lot of even homeless, those who can't afford to have a baby, that go to that hospital. And I know since that time, I've gotten calls from the hospital. Hey, we got another one, and there's a celebration in my home.
So hospitals provide that information now, right?
When I know, yes, they do provide that information.
They give them that. It's 60
and then if
days.
there's someone I know working at the hospital, they'll give me a phone call. Hey, Pam, just want you to know there's another one. So, and we celebrate that. And we worked very hard because what's going to be happening in San Antonio now, and I don't know if you're aware of this, is that we had the law for safety devices passed. I worked on 8 years for that baby Moses law to be amended, because a lot of women who are trying to safely surrender really want that anonymity and don't want anybody to know. Now that we have different cultures, we have so many diverse cultures here, that if it were to be found out that this mom was pregnant, this teenager was pregnant, now the family's going to know. So the safety devices, which will probably be installed by the fall, we actually got the law changed. And so now that was in September of 23 that the law was changed to add the safety devices, and the city of San Antonio put away $425,000 to be able to start installing.
Is it a legal requirement that hospitals impart this information, that you have 60 days? And
I'm still going to be working with legislators to get that law. It's not in the baby Moses law. It is, there's not even a mandate, but best practice would say that it should be part of the law, that they have to inform these young ladies.
it would make sense, right?
It would make sense. When my daughter had her two, and I'm in there with her, and they're coming in there reading to them the baby Moses law, and I'm just thinking, thank God, but we need this in every hospital. So now there's so much work that needs to be done legislatively.
So the foundation is there, right? It's a matter now of getting that information out.
Yes.
And it would be much more effective to do it at the hospital than it would be to put it in the paper or talk to folks at school, right? That's where the children are born.
That's where they're born. So wouldn't that be great for that case manager to go in there with, hey, listen, if you don't think you can go home with this baby, you don't have to.
Right.
And no charges will be brought against you. And that's what's important for them to know.
Right.
Ever since we had November, December, and January of this year, and December and November of last year, we had 3 deadly abandonments in a row. Remember, it was all over the news, but it mostly affected our homeless population.
Right.
In November, she just had her baby in the woods, and another homeless man found that baby, and that baby lived. And in December, it was baby Mary, and baby Mary did not live. And then in January, we had another. So we're looking at that, and I'm finding out who this population is more and more.
Yes.
So I spent all the beginning, at least 6 months, walking amongst the homeless, giving them little baby Moses cards, telling them what's happening, taking them some water or some snacks, but making sure they understand about the baby Moses law. I have been to so many encampments and getting the word out. And then Corazon SA and CAM, I asked them to start putting it in their lunch bags that they give out. They've been doing that. Via Metropolitan has put it inside their buses. This has just been a big win for me.
Absolutely.
And it's all cost us nothing. We've just been very, very blessed the beginning of this year. And I think with all that has happened in our city, to see so many deadly abandonments, that people are saying, yes, we'll help you. Absolutely. Former Councilman John Courage paid for our Baby Moses pamphlets that we give out. And so we're out there and walking amongst the homeless and helping them understand the law.
I mean, that's definitely a vulnerable population.
It is.
You talked about safety devices a moment ago and trying to make that a requirement. Can you explain what a safety device is in the way that you're talking about?
Absolutely. So those safety devices have been sweeping our nation and have been responsible for saving the lives of babies. And so when I saw that, like, okay, we need that. And it was just a matter of knocking on doors, state representatives, senators, and sometimes those doors closed very quickly, I'm going to tell you. But it's like, okay, until we can find someone who will listen. So I just kept on going back into Austin and testifying. And, a couple of years we got shut down, but in 2023, it was finally approved. So safety devices are just this. They're on the outside of fire stations. What a mom would do is open the door. There is a bag inside that door that has so many resources, so many different pamphlets to organizations that will help that mom. She takes the bag. She surrenders this child into a climate-controlled little bassinet that the alarm will go off as soon as she closes it. So she closes it, a silent alarm goes off. They're notified within minutes. They are able to get to that baby, get that baby to the hospital for any care that it may need, and also be able to get this child into CPS and into the arms of a family.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
Yes, we're excited. When that law passed, I was jumping up and down. It's a great win.
That is fantastic, and I can see the reward that you would feel, right, watching these advocacy projects take shape. And with that, Pam, let's do a quick Q&A break. You're listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. Stay with us. We've got a question from the audience coming up next.
This is Q&A with Judge Ron Rangel. Submit your question today at beyondthegavelpodcast.com.
Welcome to the Q&A break. We have a question. Do you think AI will affect the way we view the Sixth Amendment? And now let's think about what the Sixth Amendment is. The Sixth Amendment is that part of the Constitution that guarantees individuals charged with a crime the right to have a fair trial, the right to have competent representation as it relates to having a lawyer, and everything related to aspects of that particular case. So, where do I think AI would fit in? I personally have recently discovered AI. I don't use it, although, all of us kind of do the standard, look up our names and see what it says. And frankly, I was kind of pleased with what AI said about me. I'll take it. As it relates to AI, I think that the human aspect of a criminal jury trial is very important. When you look at a screen, like let's say during COVID, the Supreme Court gave us an opportunity during COVID to have jury trials via Zoom. I was really against that on the criminal district court side. I know that there was some county court trials that took place over Zoom. I know that there were some civil trials that took place over Zoom. On the criminal side, the Texas Supreme Court was a little more restrictive, which I agreed with. It did allow for certain trials to take place if both sides agreed to them. I could not see the two sides agreeing to them, and frankly, we did not have that happen here in Bexar County, Texas. The reason for that, when a juror is looking at evidence, they're having to evaluate how truthful they find that evidence to be, how credible they think that evidence is, and they're taking all that into the balance of all the evidence that comes in before them. So in reviewing evidence, what is it that you're looking at, right? You're not just looking at the words on a transcript, on a piece of paper. What you're doing is you're looking at the whole person. You're looking at the way the person moves, the person communicates. Does the person look nervous? You're walking into a room and you can feel a stressful environment. You can feel heavy emotion in the air. Those aren't things that you can see through a computer screen. If somebody is testifying and you kind of see their head move back and forth, this has happened to me. I'm watching a witness testify and I see the head shake a little bit and I'm wondering, that's kind of an odd little tick that person has. And then I sort of get an opportunity to notice that what's happening is a person is moving their leg 1,000 miles an hour, and that's causing their head to move some. There's little stresses, there's little feelings, there's little extras that you get when you're seeing something live as opposed to through a computer screen. To me, I think of AI being akin to the same type of thing. It's not real. It's not human. When we are evaluating the punishment on somebody who's been found guilty of a crime, we're trying to evaluate their heart. We're trying to figure out what type of person that it is that we're trying to figure out what is the right thing to do with. What is the proper balance as it relates to sentencing? The victim got injured. We want to feel that emotion. We want to feel that tension. We want to feel those things that make us whole. Things that come out of our mouths are not the only things that make us human. It's the emotion aspect of it. It's the soulfulness of who we are that makes us human. And that's what jurors do in a jury trial. That's what the Sixth Amendment is all about. The Sixth Amendment is making sure that if somebody's accused of a crime, they have an opportunity to be heard appropriately in a trial that is fair to both sides, that is open, that follows all the mandates of what the Constitution is about. And as a result of that, we're making very human decisions on what the ultimate sentencing is, what the ultimate verdicts are in these types of cases. So as a result of that, I don't think AI should in any way be involved as it relates to the Sixth Amendment. I'm sure that there's aspects of AI that somebody who is more familiar with it can come in with and sort of identify where AI can improve parts of the jury trial. I'm thinking of things like a jury selection. Theoretically, one could take in all of the demographics of those that are on a jury panel and would have the ability to sort of put them into this AI system and then sort of spit out these types of people generally will have these types of characteristics, which are the kind of characteristics you would want to be on your jury. I can see something like that beyond jury selection, beyond the idea of what appropriate questions would be. I cannot see much more than that as it relates to the human aspects of the trial. That's a very good question. Don't stop sending in those questions. You can text Beyond the Gavel anytime, or you could reach out through our website, beyondthegavelpodcast.com. Now let's head back to the conversation.
This is Q&A with Judge Ron Rangel. Submit your question today at beyondthegavelpodcast.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Pamela discussing her work with Eagles Flight. Let's sort of turn the corner then. You know, you're involved with the Baby Moses Law, otherwise known as a Safe Haven Law. Started in 1999, and then here we are then come 2022. The legislature then passes a law which took effect in August of 2022 in Chapter 170A of the Texas Health and Safety Code, which really made a woman terminating her pregnancy in Texas truly one of the most restrictive laws that one could have as it relates to abortion around the country, right? So the idea there, it basically prohibited abortions in almost all circumstances. basically any point after conception with very limited exceptions related to the life-threatening condition to the mother or related to some sort of substantial impairment of a major bodily function for a pregnant female. So basically, it virtually made it virtually impossible for almost all women, not all, but almost all women in Texas who wanted to terminate a pregnancy. So what effect did that law have on your advocacy with the Baby Moses law?
Well, I'm going to tell you, as soon as that law passed, I got phone calls from every station here, news station in San Antonio. How is this going to affect you? How are you going to be affected? And I'm like, well, so I believe we're going to have more dumpster babies, if you will. I believe we're going to see more children being discarded like trash. And that's exactly what we've seen. Look at these 3 cases that just happened a few months ago. Look at the case that just happened a couple of months ago where you see a dad with a briefcase throwing a baby away in a trash can. And so what happened then, the decision back then, is affecting women now, and especially those we see it happening so much for those nonprofits who work with pregnant moms that they're going to discard their baby. This is a given. A lot of these nonprofit organizations are just trying to usher those women into the hospital, telling them, no, leave them at the hospital. And they're doing fantastic work, but these women who are pregnant and still doing drugs, still under the influence of a lot of substances and homeless, and now they're giving birth to a baby who's already addicted and is going to have major health issues because of that addiction. So we're seeing a lot of the backlash of that. We're seeing some of the things that they said were going to happen are actually happening, and we're, those of us who are on the streets, we're seeing that, and it's just a hard place to be.
So the law is it's an onerous law. I'm not making any commentary on it, right?
Exactly.
On this, in this particular program, I stay away from political opinions of my own. But what this law does is it basically makes anybody involved with the performing or the inducing or an attempting of an abortion, if a child, an unborn child, is in fact dead as a result of this procedure, it's a first-degree felony, which means it's a punishment range of anywhere from 5 years up to 99 years or life. It's akin to a murder. It's basically a murder charge. Yeah. So in terms of the safe haven stuff and everything related to this law, has your advocacy changed in any way? Have you looked at it from a different perspective and tried to? Absolutely
not. Our advocacy, it still continues to remain the same. We have just been a bit more busy with discarded babies.
So you're finding more babies that are discarded. All right. So let's go back to that then, because you mentioned your first experience with baby Noel. You got custody of the body of this child. And I take it the purpose of that then was to provide it a burial.
Absolutely.
Right. That's what you did?
For purpose of a burial.
All right. So let's talk about that. What does that look like?
Well, with Noel and learning that process, we CPS was representing the other 2 children and Noel. And the DA was Susan Reed at the time. And she sent her people to, of course, just make an argument that if I were to bury this baby and the father came forward, that father could sue the county. Yes,
I guess it would have to be an attorney appointed to represent the unknown father.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I remember that because Judge Sakai told them if they didn't sign it, we're going to find you in contempt, and this baby needs a burial. And I'm sitting next to the CPS lawyer, and I remember I'm just in tears because this was such a hard thing, a hard first door to go through. And then Judge Sakai didn't make it any better because he said, "Young lady, I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, "Thank you, Judge." And that was just a hard process. But 15 months later, Only 15 months later, baby Christian in a piece of luggage, Mother's Day weekend, 2015. And that was like, oh my gosh, what? It, and we never found a mom or a dad for baby Christian. And so Christian is buried at Resurrection Cemetery along with the other babies, but his headstone says Christian Allen. So there's a baby that I've never held, didn't get to feel his breath on my skin, didn't get to look into his face, but carries our last name because we could. And they said it so matter of fact. Well, he doesn't belong to anybody. This is the medical examiner. He doesn't belong to anybody, so he's just going to be known as baby boy. And that was just a hard one for Tim to hear. And he said, we're standing right here. He belongs to us. His name is Christian Allen. And so that process continued. And then the children, a boyfriend gets a newborn and throws him on the ground. And the mother is left standing and doesn't know how to bury her baby. And so we started taking those cases and making sure that they had some dignity. And so we decided, yes, we're going to help this mom. We're going to help this family. And, more and more cases like that, very high profile cases. Usually the most intense cases are the ones that everybody runs away from. But I called eagle's flight that for a reason, because the eagle is the only bird that will fly towards the turbulence because it catapults them higher. And so we will always take those cases that are just so like, oh my gosh, nobody wants them.
That's a great image.
It was wonderful.
And Eagles Flight is your nonprofit.
Yes.
And so your nonprofit then purchases land in these cemeteries?
Yes.
And then with these purchases, and then you've had 75 burials? 65. So you've had 65 burials. And so you develop caskets, you purchase caskets.
Yeah, we have gotten so many great relationships with people who make caskets, people who do flower arrangements. We've been able to just cultivate relationships through our journey, and we've been able to do that.
And you have services, and so this is a place where anybody could just go and visit these babies that are buried. And is there a location?
Yes, Resurrection Cemetery next to Taft High School. Now I have 5 of our abandoned babies that are buried there. Noel is buried over at Sunset off of Gibbs Sprawl, and I left him there in Babyland at that funeral. I left him there because when we had his burial, his family members, cousins, came to that funeral. I left him there because his family knows that he's there.
Right.
And so we'll go and we'll take some flowers or we'll take some things, and there'll already be some decorations there. So I know that they visit him. I would not want to move him because they know. And one day, he's got 2 siblings. I've kept everything from his funeral because one day his siblings will find me. I mean, it's very a public thing. And I want to be able to give them the fact that they had a brother.
That's special. So looking at it from the national perspective, we know which way Texas has gone with the law that I discussed a moment ago. What about the post-Roe landscape on the national scale? We know that since the U.S. Supreme Court has basically said that Roe v. Wade is no longer applicable, how has that affected what you've seen and the job and the role that you take upon yourself to do this type of advocacy?
I very much take on your way of approaching things in a non-political arena, because bottom line is this: there's a child whose life is in a balance here. Will they be discarded? Will they live? There's a mother whose cycle needs to be broken. And I look at it, we are busier than what we've ever been. We had a woman with 2 children, like stair-step children, one like 3, another one 2, and pregnant. And she's lamenting over the fact, I cannot do this again. I can't. And our ears really, I mean, she's going to be on our radar. We ended up helping her safely surrender her child to an adoption agency and giving that baby a better chance. And so we have been busy in both arenas helping these mothers. And that's why I named Giovanni's Hugs, because we take in those mamas who are pregnant. We take in those mothers who have so many children, and we're always on the lookout, looking for signs of child abuse, looking for signs of, we've got a lot of immigrants, and we always had to worry about trafficking. So we do stay busy, and these laws, whether I agree or disagree, my response is going to be the same. Can we save this baby, and can we help this mom? And that's what always drives me, especially when we get cases like this. What are we going to do to save that baby?
Well, I've seen your advocacy. I've gone to a lot of your events. They've been a lot of fun. You always have really good people there. You have local celebrities that are there, and I always enjoy just basically hanging out and seeing the significance of the work that you do. The interesting part to me is how is it, and this is a question for you, if you're able to answer it, right? There's got to be unintended consequences to every law. I've seen laws with great intentions end up having consequences that maybe weren't anticipated. So sometimes there's got to be gaps that are created to fill in. So in your opinion, do these laws that we're talking about related to Chapter 170A of the Health and Safety Code, does that adequately protect children and parents, or is there some other thing that maybe needs to be done to sort of fill those gaps?
I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. When you talk about the consequences, people are making these laws, and up here, it seems to be such a tear down, but you're making these laws and what's best for the community, what's best for the public. But when you're down here and you're trying to deal with what they've decided, one person, a good friend of mine, she was talking about all of the focus is on these different laws, but they're missing the point of the mental health issues. You've got to look at that too. When the consequences come back, the consequences of the laws being changed in 2022 and us having to deal with it on this level, and I point to this level, but I think very highly of all of us who are out there trying to save the lives of these children. But the component that's missing is the mental health, addressing the mental health issues that are happening. A pregnancy is just a result of something else that's going on.
Right.
A woman with a mental health issue that is trying to live and selling her body. You're dealing with all of this here on the streets of our city, of our county. And then you have people, and there's a disconnect in between because they're not understanding. And how could they understand a mental health issue if they're not going through it themselves, or if they're not there in the streets, in the thick of it, looking at what's happening? And this is for someone who hangs out with the homeless population
That makes
constantly.
sense. Yeah. I mean, I've talked about, and I don't know if I've talked about it on this podcast or not. Maybe it's a different podcast that I was a guest on, but 53% of those that get arrested with an underlying mental health diagnosis that is a result of whatever action it was that got them into the criminal justice system. Here we're talking about a murder case, right? Somebody gets pregnant and somehow or another they abandon a child, not in the way that they're supposed to. Child dies. They're looking at a murder case. But it also goes on down the road, right? Somebody that has a mental health diagnosis that cannot get insurance because they don't have a job, or they don't know how to fill out forms, or they're not accepted for certain types of assistance. That particular person then will rely on some sort of illicit drug, whatever that drug may be. It could be meth, it could be heroin, it could be whatever type of drug, which is illegal, pills, and that person gets caught. Now they're a felon. So we're now criminalizing further an individual who is already behind the eight ball with that mental health diagnosis. And by criminalizing them, we're basically telling them that you're not really going to have an equal opportunity in life. Right? You already started off at this location. So the idea then is diagnose folks, have those in charge of funding stop talking about everything they want to do with mental health issues, but actually create a system in our society where we can have a series of case managers that can sort of oversee certain caseloads, where we can get folks the treatment that they desire, and in doing so, we're helping them avoid these kinds of issues, right? So I guess what I'm hearing from you is, if you create a law that makes it exceptionally restrictive for anyone to get an abortion, even for abortion providers, right? I've heard all these news reports on how providers have basically left the state because for a doctor, they're becoming a first degree felon if they get involved in an abortion proceeding. And so you're doing that, but you're not actually attacking the underlying cause of why somebody impregnated or got pregnant, right? I mean, that's the issue.
Right.
So like the justice system, having an unwanted pregnancy, a lot of those issues interrelate. They're connected to each other, right?
They're very connected. And wouldn't it make sense, though, to instead of having this surplus, we were talking about the surplus that our state was talking about of monies that they had, instead of having that surplus, maybe getting some committees of nonprofits, helping them when they're building these laws and looking at the whole picture instead of looking at this small little piece of it. Yeah. And it just doesn't make sense. And getting some committees of real life people who are sitting with real life women having babies that they do not plan on keeping, well, then how do you plan on ridding yourself of this child once this child has been born? If discarding and ending up in jail seems like a great option, then you're wrong. And so it's frustrating when you hear all of these laws and all these people and with their high salaries, not understanding what someone on the street would be going through.
Got to understand the population, right?
Exactly. And so when you don't have an understanding of that, I think that you have these blinders on and you're not looking at what some of these real issues are. And my focus, I was once called very unpatriotic for helping immigrants, helping refugees, helping the homeless. That
seems to be a very American thing to do, by the way.
But my response is always this: if there's a child involved, they are not going to be held responsible for anything that their parents may or may not have done. But if a child needs to eat, and I'm going to look at that child and say, well, you're an immigrant, so I can't feed you. I sleep well at night knowing that I've done my job each and every day, walking on the journey that he's called me to. If that upsets some people, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with some people being upset.
You got to be compassionate, right?
Yeah.
That's and it's always a balance on how things operate. So, we talked a little bit about hospitals and maybe advocating for a law where hospitals would be required to provide this education. What other options would there be? Schools? I know that educational opportunities are different now for the young. I know that things like civics aren't taught. Certain topics schools are supposed to stay away from. Money's being consistently pulled out of public schools. My wife was a school teacher, and it would frustrate her to see that the most vulnerable population in her school would consistently be the place where the resources would be pulled from whenever there was a lack of that type of stuff. So what other things do you advocate? I mean, clearly you've thought about this a lot.
Yes.
Clearly this is at the forefront of your mind. What other things can we as a society do to work on the underlying causes of these issues?
Well, you mentioned something about the schools. Let me go to that because I've gone to multiple high schools, junior highs, Baby Moses information. Let's get that out there. It's very interesting to me that some of the schools in the lower income districts will take that. They'll take the information. Some of the schools in the higher income district, you're talking about the Dominion area, all that. Absolutely not. We will not address that. Okay, got you.
What do
And
you attribute that to? What do you think?
you know, culturally, now listen, I live in Bernie. I do live right, the Dominion right there. Okay. I live in that little part of Bernie that's Bear County.
And for those who are not from San Antonio, the Dominion area is a very, very
Wealthy.
exclusive place to live. Yes. Yes. A
I
lot
let
of
someone like me in, so I don't know. But,
a lot of NBA stars have
Yes,
lived there. A lot of
absolutely.
other famous people
yeah,
from San
they go
Antonio.
to CVS down the road. So yeah. But then you look, and I asked specifically for my outreach center to be in the 78211. I was very, very focused on getting in that area. High incident of teen pregnancy, high incident of domestic violence, high incident of handgun use with children in the house, all of it. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. Absolutely.
Right.
And so we're there. There was a study done by Incarnate Word talking about the north side versus the south side, and that the north side has a 20-year longer a lifespan than those from the south side. So there's such a great divide. And when you look at the south side, and I'm going to them with this information, I mean, they have such a rampant teenage pregnancy program. There's so many young ladies, but you're looking at options, and those on the north side seem to have better options, and those on the south side or the lower income side of town. And I've seen that.
There's an opportunity to make a difference. Huh?
Yes.
Well, and then here's another little concept. I mean, we've all read it, and it's anecdotal, I know, but we've all read about those circumstances where it's illegal to help somebody transport themselves across state lines. But New Mexico is a state that's not that far away. Somebody in those wealthier, more affluent areas have the ability to travel on a family vacation to New Mexico across the state line and have a pregnancy terminated, whereas somebody from the inner city here in San Antonio would not have that same opportunity. Right? It costs money to travel and everything related to that. So that's an issue. One of the things that I've learned, and I first ran and won this office in 2008. I've always felt like it was very important for me to spend a lot of my time in my own political activities to stay in those parts of town where people generally would get arrested because of the lack of support, community-wise, family support, the minority areas, not a whole lot of opportunities presented. To me, that was important because those are the people that we see in the justice system, right? And it's important for me to get out there to let them know, hey, we're all a community. We all work together. We all come from a place that we should be proud of, and I think it's important that I make myself present in those areas. So I take it you kind of do the same thing. I mean, that's sort of what you see, right? One of the things that is interesting to me is the lack of understanding that people have, the lack of education related to the system. I mean, I had a guy about a week ago, and this is not a slight on him. Yeah, I like this person very much, but he posted somewhere. I think he was angry at me because he has seen firsthand how I've thrown a life away, just given somebody some crazy, exorbitant sentence, and it kind of shocked me because I don't think of myself that way. But I looked up. I looked him up. I found out what he was talking about. He was talking about a jury trial where a jury found a guy guilty and gave him the minimum sentence, which was 25 years in prison. So he didn't realize that it was a jury trial, and then he didn't realize that the lowest amount of time the guy could get based on what he was charged with and how he was charged was 25 years. And so for me, I just sort of had to illuminate that, like, hey, this was a jury thing, and this person got the minimum. It wasn't like I threw out this crazy, exorbitant sentence. That educational process, sort of like that starfish at a time story, right? The boy walking down the beach and picking up the starfish and throwing them in the water, saving that one life. I take it that's kind of how you see your work, right? You see it as being a person at a time, an educational opportunity at a time. What have you seen your activities produce over the long term. You've talked about some of the laws that you've been involved in. 65 babies is a lot of babies that you buried. What are some of the things that make you feel like it's all worth it?
Oh my goodness. I think it's those families who are walking through such crisis, and come back years later. And
The
just to say,
relationships?
yes. And I'm very relational. That is important to me. We had this one man come back, and he's always bringing donations. It's like as if he went to a garage sale and bought a whole bunch of stuff. And he's bringing that once a month, coming in, bringing it. And but I told him, thank you so much. You're so consistent with this. Thank you. And he said, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I meet so many people. I'm so sorry. I don't know your name. And he said, no, you bought me a drill and some work items that I needed when I'd come out of Bear County. And I was incarcerated and no one would help me. And someone made a phone call to you and you said, of course. And you bought me shoes, you bought me a drill, you bought me the tools that I needed for my job. They told you what I needed. And I said, oh, I remember you. He said, because of you, I was able to get a job. I met someone, got married, and now I have a little one. So I will always remember you. That made an impact on me because I didn't remember, and we're always helping. I've got a great staff. I've got a great board of directors, but I will be confronted in the public. You buried my niece. Thank you so much. You did this for me. And honestly, my mom used to tell me, you need to take an account. And I said, no, I only want to hear the accounting when I get to the other side. And he says, well done, faithful servant.
Yes.
And I don't need any of that. And so it sometimes comes back to me that someone is thankful for something that we've done. In the same token, though, and you're right, there's some people that will be angry. There's some people that are not always going to agree with your decision. But for me, what holds true are that I'm not doing that for their approval. And I've got to be able to be so satisfied in my day and what I've done for others that if I don't seek their approval. And if they're not happy with something that I've done, that's going to be their issue and not mine. I'm going to continue to walk where I'm supposed to go.
That's a very good perspective. That's a very honorable perspective. And I think it's important that we in the public eye keep that in mind because we do generally tend to get criticized for things that we have no control over, things that have nothing to do with us because people basically sometimes feel the need to have to put blame on somebody or something. And in the beginning, when I first started this type of work, sometimes I could handle it, without worrying too much. But other times you feel like that
Right.
criticism is not accurate. And over time, you just learn to realize that there's nothing you can do about that. And that's not why you do it, right? You don't take these positions on with the concept that you're going to become more popular at the end of the day, right? You don't do it because you necessarily choose to have an easier life. You do it because you want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's been your realm. That's what you've learned because you gave us in your introduction, you gave us a lot of different activities that Eagles Flight is involved in, but I know Eagles Flight is involved in a lot more, right? A couple days ago, we were at a vigil over at a Northeast Side church for flood victims. There was a young man who spoke beautifully, moved me very much, related to his father who had drowned in this flood situation that happened a couple of months ago. And you've been a source of inspiration for them, right? You've been able to reach out to them and lift them up and tell them, hey, we are here for you as a community. What is that like? What other types of activities? I would love for people to hear the things that you do that are related to that type of stuff.
Well, in June, when we had that flood here in San Antonio.
Yeah, and just so people know, right? The flood happened.
June 12th.
We had a lot of rain.
So much rain. Yeah. And then the construction in that area and all of those components that were contributed to that horrific flood.
The water all came down. It funneled through a construction area and it just swept away.
And there they are waiting in line at a light.
Right.
At a light.
And,
and they get swept away.
How many people drowned in that?
13.
And it was in the morning? People were going to work.
Yes,
they were
4
going
or
to
5
school.
in the morning.
Yeah.
People on their way to work, people coming from their job.
Mm-hmm.
But all of them did not even understand that was their last morning.
Yeah, they were just on the road. They're just on the road waiting to get home.
And here comes this wave of water. And the descriptions and the way the families talk about how when they were on the phone with them that they could hear the rushing water. And I've talked to and interviewed so many of them. No, this is not in my realm. Somebody says, why do you get involved? Well, there's some pain and loss there. And they need to know that someone's going to be rooting for them. And so we did the vigil first. Remember, you were there at that.
The candlelight vigil?
The candlelight vigil. That was so moving.
It was.
And all of their families were there. And it was just, man, just to hear them. And they need someone to listen and someone to hear their sorrow.
How did you put that together? Did you reach out to all those people? Did you say, hey, I'm Pamela Allen?
I said, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Reaching out to some of them, calling reporters. There's a lot of wonderful reporters on all the different stations, and I'm calling them, hey, you've talked to this family. I need their number. I need this. I need that. And so calling everybody and coordinating this and getting them together, and every family was represented there.
We want to have a candlelight vigil.
Yeah.
Showed up. A lot of people were there. Very large parking lot that was filled. Prayers were said. And people who were families of these folks that had passed as a result of this flood were walking around getting hugs from people. I observed people putting their hands on other people's shoulders, telling them, man, we're with you. We love you. We're here to support you. It was the most beautiful thing. That was just so inspiring. And then here we go, we're focusing on them. All of us are, the city, just watching their journey and the news carrying their stories. And then July 4th happens. In Kerrville,
and the flood and all these babies and all these little girls. And oh my gosh, that was immense. That was
painful.
And of course, I've got to be there. And why? Just to hold someone and tell them it's going to be okay. I don't know how it will be okay, but I know that it will. And so I started going there and helping and removing mud. And I remember we found this baby doll that belonged to a 75-year-old Vietnam veteran, but his mom made that doll. And I remember pulling it out, and it's like he won the lottery. And I remember giving it to him, and he's just there, oh my gosh, and he's so happy. And I'm walking away like, okay, just like that was something. It was so small and insignificant, which it looked like to a lot of people. But I'm in mud that's almost up to my knees inside of his house, by the way. That is just like, and I find this, and I'm like, okay, this might be something. Just, when you feel within you, I've got to do this, and people will always question you, but is this something else you need to get involved in? But when you know, then you know. And so here's all these men with these big machinery. Hey, we're with you. They met at my house. My neighbors just do not like us, but because we always have something going on. There's this large convoy of all this heavy equipment and all these men from different churches, different organizations, different businesses. Hey, we're with you. And that's inspiring to me, that when I make a few phone calls and say, hey, can you help? Yeah, if you're going, we're going to go with you. And so that means something to me. But again, that's been years and years of cultivating a relationship with leaders like yourself, with businesses, with organizations, and having it put out there. Listen, we're going to raise awareness about the baby Moses law because you shouldn't be throwing your baby away. Some people always ask, why are you always in the news? Why do you feel that that's important? Well, I think it's important to raise awareness, and I think it's important to ignite something within you to do something. So, love it or not, I'm always going to be that voice.
Raising awareness by exercising compassion when the law doesn't always address the big picture. helps to fill those gaps, right? It helps to make that difference. So where do you see Eagles Flight going in the future? Where do you see your nonprofit growing into? You mentioned that you have employees and you have a board. How big is Eagles Flight? How many folks do you have working for you?
So we have five people working for us in different areas. Of course, we have our outreach center. We get a lot of volunteers, and TWC sends their people too. Thank God.
And the outreach center does what?
The outreach center gives out food, clothing, baby items, anything that you need for a baby, raising a baby. We also help families with utility assistance. We have an MOU with Bear County. We give out resources to other nonprofits. If there's an elderly person that needs help, well, we know who to send them to. If there's anybody having a struggle in any area, we've created such a network. We've linked arms with so many people that we're able to get you to the right program. And so we do have a lot of resources. Here's the great thing about this. South San Independent School District had a lot of problems and struggles. I mean, we've seen that too.
Yes.
So when I met with them, I ask them, could we be housed in one of your buildings that's not being used? Wouldn't this be a great way to rebrand your school district as being the most compassionate? They allow us a whole building. We don't pay utilities. We don't pay rent. We don't pay anything. And they only said, would you take care of our families? Absolutely. Would you allow me to operate without borders? They said, absolutely. And so it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a nonprofit's dream of all dreams, is being able to operate with having no overhead. Now, we do buy some items that people need. You know, there's always a nonprofit. When don't we need money? We always need funding.
Right.
And, you know, we're thankful to have a lot of supporters. But then we have our day hab, and our day hab, whatever we make there, that's overage that goes and feeds in to Eagles Flight. And so we're going to continue doing what we're doing, operating how we operate. We serve over 150,000 people a year with food, clothing, with resources, with advocacy. And that is, I'm going to tell you, that is my favorite part. The other thing that we do is our summer animal play, where we have all of our special needs children and adults just descend onto our property. That's why our neighbors are always familiar with these long car lines. We're at the end of a cul-de-sac. And so they're familiar. And so we've had this amazing relationship with so many families here in our county, and this is where we're supposed to be. And as long as we're supposed to be, then I know that we're going to continue moving forward.
Pamela, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. I've learned quite a bit about what you do.
Thank you so much, Judge. I appreciate it.
Are there any last words that you would have for our listeners?
Absolutely. There's so many people that ask, how can we get involved? How can we help you? And simply, you could visit our website at eaglesflightsa.com. And if you'd like to donate, please do. Or if you'd like to volunteer, we'd love to have you aboard. That is a really big thing for us, to have our community get involved with what we do and making impacts. Again, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I remember about 6 years ago, you came into the office and you were going to have some event, and you asked me to be a part of it. And you've asked me to be a part of a couple of your events. It's been a while. So I don't know if there's anything to that or not. But one of those events involved us going on a TV show. You have a really good friend named Cleto, who's a local celebrity here. A lot of people know Cleto. And so we were involved in going on some TV show, and there was like a Batman character and a Wonder Woman character. What was that event about?
That was our lip sync battle. It was amazing, and it was hilarious. We love doing lip sync battles. We've also had lip sync battle of the bands, and those get outrageous. You've been the judge for those. They get outrageous, and costumes and confetti and wigs. Yeah, remember, I got to be Tina Turner for a little bit.
Absolutely. I was impressed.
So when we do all of that, we have a lot of fun, and we have a lot of laughs. And I love those times when we get to laugh, because then we get back into the thick of things. And there's a lot of things that aren't so funny and aren't, doesn't cause a lot of joy. But it's great when we have those moments, and we've appreciated your support throughout the years.
Thank you. Those things are fun. And you're raising money. You're raising money for Eagles Flight. Is that?
Absolutely. We are always having to do those types of fundraisers. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We're a small nonprofit. And so we definitely continue to do fundraisers. We're going to be having a fundraiser coming up in November called Flight of Homes, where we get to have, as a community, buy tickets to come and see some beautiful houses in the King William District. So it's a different type of fundraiser for us. Doesn't involve wigs or confetti, but it's an opportunity to raise money for Eagles Flight.
Well, those fundraisers are always fun. I always appreciate you inviting. We have reached the end of today's episode. Big thanks to Pamela Allen for joining us, and thank you, the listener, for gracing us with your presence. Be sure to subscribe, drop us a question, and keep the conversation going between episodes. You can now reach out by sending your questions and thoughts anytime through our website and by texting the show in the description box. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
You've been listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. Join us in the next 2 weeks where we are educating the public and expanding mindsets. Head to our website, beyondthegavelpodcast.com, or your favorite podcast platform to subscribe to the latest episodes and updates.